Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilly. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a couple hugging as seen from the side. We're going to have the boy on this side, we're going to have the girl on this side, and I'm going to begin with just a couple of rough guidelines. I know a lot of people don't really like guidelines, and if you find drawing guidelines tedious or unhelpful, you don't need to necessarily follow this part of it. But notice that I've got the one vertical line here that I'm going to kind of build everything off of. And I'm starting with a roughly triangular shape that comes up here. This is going to be his shoulder and upper arm, which he's got around her shoulder. Now, pay attention to the shape here, the sort of width of it, and all of these different aspects of it, because the more accurately you are able to replicate this, the more accurate all the proportions will be for everything else. Now I'm going to go ahead and start drawing the top of her head. She's leaning her head against his shoulder. And so her face is going to be partially concealed by his upper arm. And then finally over here I am going to put his head, which is again partially concealed behind her head, as we're looking at this all from the side. So we kind of got the basics of that in place. This is his, remember, upper shoulder, upper arm, and then his lower arm, forearm, comes around like this, around her shoulder. And finally, just to finish off this section, I'm going to draw a long rectangular shape. This is his torso from the side, and I'm imagining him wearing a kind of a sweater, something like that. And come down here to do the rest of her body. A little hard to describe this shape. It sort of looks to me like an hourglass shape. The classic hourglass figure. And over here we're going to roughly indicate his legs. Pay attention to the sliver of this space here. You know, that'll help you get this accurate. There's a little sliver of negative space there where his the one line of his leg is going to go, and then coming down here like so. I'm not getting into too many of the details, but let's go ahead and draw her skirt. I'm going to put it out like this. And if you're trying to replicate my exact drawing, you're going to want to pay attention to the length of this skirt versus the sweater. But you may choose to put her in different clothing, in which case, you just sort of make your alterations as you go. But getting these basic guidelines in place will at least help you get some of the proportions accurately rendered for a hug as seen in this particular pose. Now, of course, this is the sort of classic from the side view. You may want me to do one that is from a different angle. If so, please just let me know in the comment section, and we'll do a follow-up video maybe for that. But I think we've got enough of the basic guidelines in place. Let's zoom in and start working on the details of the upper part of the drawing. Alright, so this is probably going to be the most challenging part of the video. Let's go ahead and get in her lower arm coming across here, and as a sort of little hint for you, if you can get a triangle of negative space in right here, that can help you in drawing her arm, again, in this particular pose. And coming down here like this, we reach the elbow and curve back up. Again, the distances between these lines here and between these lines here, crucial in terms of getting the proportions right. And then this comes across, she's putting her hand up onto his shoulder. Of course, there's lots of different ways of hugging, but I had to choose one, and I should say that I based this on some photo reference that I saw, so as to try to be reasonably accurate. And so this is her hand coming up and resting on his shoulder. So we got that in place, and we can start to work more on the details of her face. Now, I'm giving her a particular hairstyle. Of course, if you're drawing your own character, she may have different hair, and so you would draw this in a different way. But the eye, hopefully, will be in the same place if you want to go with this pose that I'm doing here. And notice that first vertical line and that shape of his upper arm gives you a pretty good guide for where to place her eye. There's something about this pose that looks like it is not a cheerful hug. It seems like a goodbye hug, a sort of tragic, sad hug. I've given her eyebrow just a little bit of that indication of sadness there. Over here, this is really quite tricky. Focus on this if you can. If you've got this arm in the same proportions there, I'm going to put in his the bottom of his nose, which lines up a little bit with that eyebrow. That might help in terms of placing that line. But we're drawing his nose and just a part of his face in profile here. Quite tricky. I find this kind of thing very tricky to render accurately every time. And then we're going to see his eye from the side. Again, I see this as sort of a sad farewell hug, so I'm again giving him this eyebrow just a little bit of a look of sadness there. And I'm going to quickly indicate lines for the hair. Sort of trying to redraw this as I go on the fly, because I think it's maybe not as accurate to where his head ought to be as I wanted. But there you go. We got sort of that, and later on we're going to get into the wrinkles of the clothing, but I think I'll just sort of leave it for now. Suffice to say that the folds get kind of pulled in this sort of a direction. At least that's the way it was in the photograph that I was looking at. And I'm going to give her a sleeve. She's wearing one of these classic sailor suits. I always love to do that. If you saw Miki Falls, my manga series, she is a Japanese high school student, and so she's always got that sort of classic sailor suit type uniform on. I'm putting his hand right here. You're not going to see all of his hand. You're just seeing sort of the pinky and one or two of the other fingers as he's reaching his hand around to complete the hug. And some wrinkles maybe right here where her clothing is being pulled up against his sweater. I sort of see him as wearing a sweater here, and I'm going to go ahead and indicate some lines here of his the cloth being pulled up. Both of them sort of the cloth being pulled up this way, probably related to the arms being raised that creates that kind of effect. So I think we got the basic details of this in place. Let's go ahead and move down to draw the lower sections of their bodies. All right, well, I'm going to move through this a lot more quickly. I think when people ask for video on people hugging, it's mainly that upper section where the arms are going around one another's bodies. That's the tricky part, and they're not necessarily wanting to see how the legs look. But in this particular pose, you're going to get some wrinkles at the knee. Actually, in almost any pose, when you're wondering about clothing folds in pants, you tend to get wrinkles and folds around the knee. I'm doing an upper area of her socks. We don't really need a whole lot of details on the legs themselves, but I'm going to go ahead and put in some lines for the skirt here. And that is pretty much going to do it for that. I want to make sure I don't completely fly through all of this in time-lapse, as I sometimes do. So let's try to move on and get the black Prismacolor out to do some of this in real time as I finish off the drawing. All right, so I decided actually to stay zoomed in here on the upper section because, I think that's mainly what people, when they want a video on how to draw a hug, it's this upper section that is what's giving them problems. I think it's the contrast between this week and last week is so funny because last week I was doing Gundam robots with giant shields and rifles. This week we're doing hugs. Hey friends, we're learning how to draw hugs because hugs make you feel nice. So we definitely get lots of contrast here at youtube.com/markrilly, your one-stop shopping network for how to draw videos. But it is sort of funny as you go from one topic to the other. You're covering the full range of what people want to learn how to draw. And please continue to give me your suggestions for the kinds of videos you want to see. So you can see me going in with this black Prismacolor to do final line work here, trying whenever possible to cover the initial lines with a single, whoops, there's that breaking Prismacolor. That's the one downside of this thing. They do tend to break sometimes. And if you look carefully at Miki Falls, you'll probably be able to find some instances of little dots like that where it's shattered. I don't know the solution, people. Maybe just to use an inking pen instead of the black colored Prismacolor. Why do I use a colored pencil for inking? It doesn't make sense. I like the look of it, though. And there is something just a little more forgiving somehow about a pencil, whereas the ink, there's just the finality. Of course, if you are trying to do something for publication, you would want to be using ink by and large. Although, again, Miki Falls was done using colored pencils, so it's not impossible to get something published if you prefer the colored pencil look. In any case, I probably should do more videos in which I'm inking rather than using the black Prismacolor. So yeah, keep your eye out for that in the weeks and months and years ahead. We are coming up on 500,000 subscribers. Can you believe that, people? I'm going to have to do some sort of video acknowledging that. I have not come up with an idea for it yet. Please give me your suggestions. Just don't make it anything too ambitious, because I don't have time to do an incredible video at this stage. So I'm putting in the wrinkles of his upper arm here, and you get quite a number of them right here around the elbow. And you know, this is the kind of thing that without photo reference you wouldn't necessarily know where do the folds occur. So I highly advise, if you're ever stuck on drawing clothing folds, see if you can find, just by searching on the internet, Google image search is the one that I use a lot, to just help yourself out to see where do the wrinkles actually occur in real life. People have this idea that artists have got all this stuff just all filed away in their brains and they can just draw anything they want completely from memory. And there may be such artists. I am certainly not one of them. I can't draw things accurately, you know, in a realistic way without getting a look at some photo reference to show me what happens in real life. And I know I'm not alone in that regard. Professional artists turn to reference all the time. Part of the job. Is one of your tools. So I think I've got the basics of the final line work here. I'm going to pull back and just do all the rest of it in time-lapse to keep this video at a reasonable length, and then I'll be back to give you some final words of advice. Alright, well, there you have it, my video on how to draw people hugging. I just wanted to follow up on last week's video. As I expected, my Irish viewers did indeed have something to say about my attempted Irish accent. The verdict is in, and the verdict is this. Mark, it was terrible. It was just terrible. Don't ever do it again. So obviously, I need to either work a lot harder on my Irish accent or just stop. Just make it stop, man. But I want to thank you all for supporting me by getting my graphic novels, Brody's Ghost, or Miki Falls, or indeed Mastering Manga, my new How to Draw Manga book. It is coming out March 8th in paper form. It's out already in electronic form. You could get it within minutes of finishing this video for the Nook, for the iPad, for the Kindle. Thank you so much in advance for all of your support, subscribing, leaving comments, doing all that you do to spread the word about my videos. I do greatly appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead, though, and lay down the pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one. real soon.